Hello.
Hey Joe, can you hear me?
Yeah. How are you?
My good camera is not working. Oh man. Don't know what's going on with my laptop. It's not letting me connect this one camera. It's really annoying. So
I like the t-shirt.
yeah, I was gonna say too informal or does it work?
No, it's fine. It's fine.
Good. I will probably blur my background too. Um, let me unblur it and see if that works too. That's a little bit better actually.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, okay. Do one more light check. How are things?
Good, good, good. I was just sitting listening to Barack's um, speech today at the library opening.
I heard it was very good. My wife sent the YouTube and was talking about it the whole time. So,
He is such a great speaker. I mean, I don't care what your politics are. You can learn by just
oh yeah.
studying him and he is such a good speaker. Oh my God. Yeah.
I mean, that's why he was Teflon. I mean, he was yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, well, honestly, I mean, charisma works. I mean, it works in both ways, current and past. So,
Yeah.
um,
He just
oh,
such a good speaker.
actually my better camera might be working. Better. Thank God.
Oh, yes.
Much better. Ugh. I don't know what was going on. Cool. I should probably share my screen. Okay, good. I could share too. So, no, I was
You
making sure I
wanna
have access to share screen for my
yeah,
slides and stuff.
you wanna test it?
Yeah, I'll just test it right now. Well, oh, you know what? I'm gonna stop share because I'm gonna do a video later too, so I have to hit the right button.
Okay.
I'm out of practice. There we go. Optimize for video sharing. And then this should be the right thing. Yep. Can you see my slides now?
Yeah.
Cool. And I'll stop share just for now because that reminds me I gotta go load. I'm gonna try to show that Office Space video, the where
Oh
he's
yeah.
like where he's got no motivation, and that's a good setup for the expectancy. And you've had a couple of these. I mean, both you had the in person, right?
Yes.
In Kauai, I think, right?
Yep, yep. And uh yeah, we've had let me see. I think this is our second recitation and we've loaded them, so there is a bunch.
Yeah.
Um And some people won't attend. There are 20 people in the class. Some people can't just because, like one division chief told me that they have graduation for their residents. So, but it's being recorded right now,
Yep.
and so folks will consume it asynchronously as well.
And I'll give you some goal setting. I have like three topics, like the intrinsic, extrinsic, then expectancy and goal setting. I know just from the number of slides, it's not too many, but I'm not going to really get to it, so I'll touch it, I'll cover it, and then I'll give you the your class. Maybe I didn't use it. I don't know if I used the uh OKR video, objectives and key results. It's the guy who worked with Andy Grove at Intel. I think I added it after yours. So I'm gonna
Yeah,
send that
sure.
video. It's the best goal setting video I've seen. Um, he's big picture, but also gets concrete. So I like that one.
Nice, great. Hey, Rosh, how are you?
Hey Joe, how are you? Yeah,
Good, good.
I'm doing well. I'm calling in from Europe.
Oh well.
Oh,
So
really?
Wait, it's
yeah,
Whereabouts?
late
yeah.
there. It's late then.
It's 2 a.m. Yeah, it's 2
Okay.
a.m. right now. So it's
Oh
fine. Don't
man,
worry.
Wow.
Well, that's the benefit of having done surgical residencies. It doesn't really matter. It kind of all blends into one thing, so it's fine.
God, where are
Glad to
you?
be here. I'm in Germany right now. I just came back doing a pit stop here in Frankfurt. I was in Prague at the European Micro Meeting, and so I'm en route back to then make it to graduation on Saturday,
Yeah.
back in Palo Alto. Yeah.
Hey, how are you? Hey.
I'm
Hey,
good.
Hank.
Hey,
Great.
Greg.
Hey guys. Hey Joe.
Good to see you. Hey, Mary.
Yeah, same.
Hi, how are you guys?
Good, good. I think Arash may win the award tonight. He's in Germany, so it's 2 a.m.
Yeah.
there.
Yeah,
That's
I'm right here in Frankfurt. That's it.
I'll have to live up.
There you
I don't
go.
know. I have to live up to something. I don't know. Keep
Hey,
you
Jim.
awake.
Hey, Jim.
I think Dave, you won't have
Hey
any
everybody.
problems with that. It's gonna be great. I'm looking
Hello.
forward to it.
Hey guys.
Hey,
Hey.
Jim. It's great to see everybody. It's hopefully you're having a good week.
Yeah, I'm good.
We'll give it a couple of minutes before we get started. Hey, Chris. Hey, Henry. Hey, Joe.
And Joe, I totally expect you to go off screen. I mean, you've seen this before.
Oh yeah, no, but I'm excited to see it again. Um, we'll wait. Anybody have any great stories about anything this week? Anything that's been good or exciting or just a regular old work week?
Anybody from the Boston area? I want to hang out with the Scots. I've heard all the media stories about the Scottish fans in Boston are amazing.
Scots in general are a very fun group of people, I have to say. They don't take themselves very seriously and they uh they handle their liquor well until they can't handle it.
And the
And then
best, yeah,
they
the best was like I don't know if it was a reporter or just somebody who might be a figure like in the local media in Boston. The house across from him in the suburbs of Boston got rented out, and they heard the Scots come in about like 11:30 at night, and at 6:30 in the morning they had draped the Scottish flag outside the house, and the guests at the Airbnb were playing literally playing the bagpipes at 6:30 a.m. And so this guy who lived across the street was out there, video recording it and getting a chuckle, being woken up at 6:30 in the morning. So they they mean business.
that took an entire suitcase to bring over those bagpipes. Like, I mean that's not a simple feat, right?
No, I mean if you're flying, you're paying a lot for that check bag.
Yeah. You guys know Don Mackay, right? I mean, the
Yeah.
former chief at Penn State, who has been a really long-term, really personal friend of mine. And at our wedding in 2015, I mean, Franklin and I have been together since, 1990. But in 2015, when it was legal, Don Mackay came and in his kilt played the bagpipes. We had a cocktail hour first before, like any good wedding. People came in, they had a cocktail hour and an open bar and a raw bar, and then Don Mackay started playing the bagpipes and brought everybody together. It was great. Anyway, it is after 8 o'clock, we'll get started. Folks will join us. Those that can't come, I know somebody's celebrating. Don told me he's celebrating graduation tonight, so not everybody will be here, but it's recorded for us to listen to again if we want to, and for those that aren't able to join us to consume asynchronously. So thanks everybody. It's great to see. It really is. It's really great to see everybody. Thanks for joining. Um, we're really lucky tonight. So for tonight's recitation, a former professor of mine and colleague and friend is here, Dave LaBelle, who's an associate professor of business administration at the Katz School of Business. He's also the director of the Berg Center for Ethics and Leadership. Is going to talk to us tonight about motivation. His research, He's an expert in organizational behavior or leadership training, and his research focuses on communications at work, emotions at work, and proactive employee behavior, which is so important for every one of us. Where, you're all, Dave, these are all leaders already,
Yep.
seasoned leaders. And the goal of his research is to improve employee performance, well-being, and organizational effectiveness, which is something that we could all benefit from. He when in the MBA course I took, he won a teaching award. He's won multiple teaching awards. And his teaching really focuses on organizational behavior, organizational change, workplace communication. So we're super lucky to have him with us tonight to talk about motivational theory. And hopefully you had a chance to watch the Pink TED Talk before, because that will kind of set the stage for the discussion. And so, without further ado, I'll turn it over to Dave, and you guys enjoy.
Thanks, Joe. I really appreciate that introduction. And if you did not get a chance to watch a Dan Pink TED Talk, that actually will help me a little bit. I wanted most of you to watch it. If you didn't get a chance, I'm going to send, I told Joe I could send these slides. I'll send a bunch of follow-ups, especially on goal setting, which I will only touch on later briefly. And I will resend the link to the Dan Pink. I mean, if you didn't get a chance, it's well worth the 15 minutes. We'll cover some of that. But he's a little more entertaining than I am. He does a really good job on that TED Talk. All right, I'm going to start sharing my screen. Why is it not going to full screen? All right. All right, can you guys see my slides now?
Yep.
Perfect. Cool. All right, so I'm going to be talking about a couple different motivation theories tonight. And Joe did most of this background, but I'm going to do a little bit of it. I got my undergrad at Wharton, and I loved management so much. I went back several years later to do all things management. I took as many management classes, leadership, work behavior, decision making, negotiations, etc. Whatever I could, I took it in undergrad and in grad school. Um, in between, I was a business analyst for a large supply chain company. I just mentioned that because it was a rotation program. It was a fun 2 years when I was 23, 24. I literally got to see everything of this wholesale company, the warehousing, even a freezer warehouse, procurement, transportation, and I got to see how everything connects. And I understood that people connect everything. So as Joe mentioned, I think I crystallized my philosophies about bringing a humanistic approach to work and making sure that human well-being is at the core of that. I was also consultant for a couple of years in Washington, D.C. with Deloitte Consulting. Actually worked for the man who's now the chief operating officer of U.S. Soccer for men and women. He took over that. He was the CEO of Deloitte, and he's now one of the head executives at U.S. Soccer. And I learned a lot about leadership from him and understanding how to work with people. So I'll share some of that with you tonight. My research, Joe already mentioned, so I won't spend too much time on that. I will say this. Communication is it's a journey. It never ends. You can always get better. I mean, I've thought, especially at work, that I was an expert on communication. But then you have kids, and then they become teenagers, and it's like talking to a wall, and often an angry wall, a very frustrated, angry wall when they hit teenage years. And so I've really started to realize over the last 2 or 3 years how it's a constant journey, reframing, trying different tactics, trying to be very patient at times. So I say that because you were already in leadership positions. It's not always going to go well. And that's part of leadership. Not everything is going to go well, and you have to reflect on it, realize what did work, what you could do better. But for you to become leaders, you need to build in that time, like you're doing here tonight. So thank you for being here in the evening, or if you're in Europe, in the middle of the night. Okay. Three things we're going to cover in this hour today. First, we're going to talk about intrinsic and extrinsic rewards. Then we're going to talk about we're going to give you three tools today, is a better way to put it, actually. Three tools. Just as you diagnose patients, we're going to talk about how to diagnose unmotivated people.
Yeah, let's do it.
I think
Can
somebody's.
we, could everybody mute their phones if that's possible?
Joe, you might be able to do it too if the host. I don't know if I can
Uh,
do it.
I'm trying and I don't have the capacity, but there we go.
Yeah,
I think we're done. Good.
good. Thank you. So consider these tools that when you have a team or maybe a single employee or a set of employees that they might not be unmotivated, but they could work harder. These are some tools that you can start to diagnose with the situation and hopefully improve it, just like you would diagnose a patient. So, intrinsic, extrinsic rewards is one diagnostic tool. Expectancy theory is another framework you can use for diagnosis, and then goal setting. Goal setting is less about a diagnostic; it's more of a prescription, and we'll get to that. Okay, we're covering those three things. Okay. Um, so I like to be interactive and keep everybody awake. So I'm going to be asking for participation in just a second. So this was a study done by some consultants several years ago, and they had a bunch of managers, leaders across industries in a lot of different businesses, a lot of different industries and job types. And they asked, managers, what do you think motivates your employees? And they gave them a list of 10 things. So I'll let you look at that list here. Okay. So they give them these 10 things. And um, what do you think again, these are the managers are being asked what motivates the employees that they are in charge of, that they supervise. What do you think these managers said off this list of 10 was most important?
Appreciation.
Okay. Al, why do you say that?
Um, I think the other things come and go, but appreciation makes you feel like the effort you're putting in uh, is worthwhile because others sort of acknowledge it and see that it's for the better of everyone else.
Got it. I'll come back to that phrase. Things come and go, but the appreciation you're saying might be longer lasting, right? What else?
I'm guessing from the purpose of the exercise that they said wages and pay.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. And that's usually the first one I get in most audiences. And I realized today I also sent, the YouTube, the TED Talk out there, so you might have primed you in a different direction. But yeah, most of the time, the first answer I get is good wages and pay. What else do you think managers said?
Good working conditions.
Yeah, and why do you say that? And how do you pronounce your name?
Hike.
Haig? Well, why do
Yeah.
you think good working conditions?
I think because if you like where you work, you'll retain employees longer. You can pay them a lot, but if they're miserable, they're just not going to stay.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. Other thoughts?
Was going to say that if the employees feel that there's loyalty from the managers, like their voice is heard, and if there are problems, they can be represented, and that would give them hope for a better future.
Yep. Yep. And people usually ask, well, what does loyalty mean? I said, well, look, I didn't design this study. This is the relational component. There's like a trust built probably between supervisor and employee that's capturing there as well. Any other thoughts?
I mean, we almost have exhausted the list, but certainly promotion opportunities, which goes along the lines of what Greg said in terms of, the future
Yep.
forward-looking things, right?
Yep.
Um,
Promotion. And also, I mean, this study was done years ago, but in today's world with AI, what's another one? We haven't talked about it yet, but what's one thing likely to motivate employees? If I'm like an
Jobs,
accountant, with
job
trust.
security.
Yeah, job security. Absolutely. Right. Certainly a lot of variance in what people think about AI, often depending on the company and also the job and how willing people are to use it. Right. And so there's a lot of, I mean, even among the undergrads, my high schooler, there's a healthy skepticism with AI, which I actually like, but it is leading to this uncertainty. And if there's uncertainty, that job security is going to become very, very important. Okay. So perfect. I wanted to get people's just kind of like your own initial reactions and also what you think others are motivated by. Okay. So what was cool about this study is they asked the managers, and then they also had access and were able to survey the employees that worked for these managers. And so the employees got to answer this question in a separate survey, asking the same questions, except that it said, what motivates you as the employees? Okay. And then um, so they were able to break this out. And here's what the managers said. And typically, especially in business school, not always with healthcare audience like this, but when I teach us in business school, it works like clockwork. First three things, first three people I call on without fail: pay, wages, promotion, and job security. The top three things. When people think about what the manager said motivates their employees, right? And I don't know if it was Chris or Jim who said appreciate, or somebody said appreciation, right? That was down on their list, okay? Number 8 on this list. And so, but when you looked at the employees and what they had to say about what motivates them, okay, what do you notice about this list compared to the others? It's obvious, but I like for somebody else to say it.
Fairly inverted.
Yes, right. Like perfectly inverted. And I always like to say, if you talk about job security, this slide gives me job security because to me, there's a gap between what managers think and what employees say. And I don't even like to get into a debate whether the employees are lying or if they're self-interested. If even on a survey, if the employee is checking this off as 1, 2, and 3, your brain starts to believe it, right? If I mean, whether you truly believe it, your brain will start to believe it. So, when I'm talking, especially to undergrads too, especially in business school, they expect that they'll get paid something, but they're really talking about these things. They want to have a manager who's understanding, to be appreciated for their work because it is longer lasting. And job security can be fleeting. A promotion may be there or not. Wages can come and go. All those things. Um, so this is a complete inversion about what employees think and what the managers think about what motivates their employees. Okay. So this is something called the extrinsic reward bias. And I'll say up front, this has nothing to do with which set of rewards is more effective. We're not talking about effectiveness of motivators. Here, though, we're talking about if we have a problem, if you have nurses who are not motivated or staff who are not treating patients well, right? The first thing that almost any leader will do is what's the reward we can give somebody, or what's the punishment we can use, or what's the reward we can take away? Well, what's the carrot we can give them, or the stick we can use to punish them? That's the extrinsic reward bias. We jump to something more tangible, like especially in terms of money, or some sort of punishment. We definitely do this with our kids. If you think about it as well, we jump towards some sort of extrinsic reward. We'll give you money for that grade. Or if you don't do this, I will punish you. I will take away keys to the car, or you can't go out late at night. Those are all you are drawing on extrinsic tools to change the motivation of the person, and you're not considering other things like autonomy, mastery, and purpose, okay, which are the intrinsic motivators. And those are the things that Dan Pink talked about in his TED Talk. And this is pretty, I mean, in almost any audience I speak to and ask this, it pops up. People think about money, promotions, job security first as the major tools. What do you think some implications of this bias are?
Well, I mean, you
Arash,
have
go ahead. Oh,
yeah,
sorry,
I
go
mean,
ahead.
you basically have folks that are speaking two different languages, right? So there's inherently a communication gap built in,
Yep.
which obviously poses problems. The question that I have that when I looked at it is when does that inversion occur? Because at some point the managers presumably were employees, uh, and when do you forget how you felt once when you started in any given
Yep.
position?
Actually, pretty quickly. So this is not a session on power, but there's some great studies in psychology on power. You just give people power, and they lose perspective pretty quickly.
Mhm.
They immediately get more narrow-minded. So it's amazing how quickly. I'm not going to say people quickly forget. Something else that happens with power, not even at work, but especially you see it in politics. There's this bias that if I got here, I must have got here on my own. Like I earned this. So you almost forgot like what you did and who you worked with on the way up, if that makes sense. So there's a bunch of things that happen with power that shift your perspective. So I'm not surprised that the inversion happens, and it does unfortunately happen quickly. And it might be small at first, but then it probably grows, especially as you go up in different levels. Carrie, I think you also had you were unmuted, so I didn't know if you wanted to say something. Maybe not. Did somebody else want to other implications? And this could be for healthcare too, especially if you're thinking about extrinsic rewards and intrinsic rewards. There's also a pretty big implication here for the healthcare sector.
Yeah, I was just going to say
Great.
that, just like a vignette from my life and probably a lot of other people's lives on this call. We're kind of dealing with like a very wide swath in the segment. So, like in the same day, we might be talking to CEO of a hospital, surgeon in chief, all the way down to like our medical assistants, who are like hourly wage workers that may not, in many cases, even have like a bachelor's degree. And my question is, how do you frame these, intrinsic, extrinsic? Because there might be people who are they're coming, and maybe it's in the lower wage sector where they don't really care so much about, say, how things are managed or if they feel appreciated. They want to make money, like you've seen that. They're right out there. They have to support a family, whatever it is. So they'll
Yes.
tolerate, some of these things. Whereas, let's say on the flip side, you might be faculty, and you've been around for a while, and now you're really craving a sense of, meaning and, like you said, autonomy,
Yep.
mastery, purpose, these kinds of things. So how do you look at all these different kinds of people and then try to figure out what is actually going to make them feel the most valued and part of the team?
Yeah, Gregory, that's a really good question. It's going to be on the next slide. I'm not sure, if I had the full hour to devote to these two slides, I probably would answer your question well. In the short term, I think the first thing is what you just said. Okay, so these are not traits, first of all, right? So don't think of somebody as extrinsically motivated as a personality trait. It shifts, like, when kids go to college, I'm faculty, I'm very intrinsically motivated, but there are times where I'm going to be like, I need to get my last promotion to full. I need to get moving because I'm, paying for kids' college. So my motivation will, even though I tend more towards the intrinsic motivation, there will be times in years and periods of time where I'm much more extrinsically motivated. And that's hard for leaders, meaning that there's changes within the person. And then to your point, if I'm dealing with staff who might be very, very worried about job security, because what if I'm a scheduler and who knows if AI can do this, and I might be somebody who is pretty intrinsically motivated, but I might be worried in the moment about my extrinsic motivators, in particular job security. So that makes it difficult. I think I think it's pretty exhausting to do that for every person. So I think it's also thinking about which problem that you have. If you have like a set of people that seem to be unmotivated in general, you could start to think, okay, which tool did we use before and has it worked? If not, maybe we should switch the type of tool. And in general, that tool probably will work better than what you tried before. So you may not get it right with 10 out of 10, but if you're trying to move the needle of motivation, if I can use a tool that gets to 7 people as opposed to motivating 4 people, you're winning, right? And so that's kind of what you're doing, especially if you know certain tools um, either haven't worked in the past or unavailable. There might be years where you don't have a promotion opportunity available, right? And you have a bunch of residents fighting for an opportunity that doesn't exist, then you might need to default to one of these tools as well. Is that helpful?
Yeah, it's very helpful. Thank you.
And one big implication for healthcare, and I kind of rely on the Cleveland Clinic here, because they talk about was it the transporters who wheel people around, and they're not lying when they say you're actually the most important person today. You may talk to the patient more than their doctor does today, so you are the face of the hospital, right? And you start the care process for this patient. That's a direct um, uh, uh, intervention in terms of intrinsic motivation, and they're not lying about it. They're not blowing smoke. It actually, if you think about it, it could be the longest conversation that patient has or the family has as the transport is wheeling them around a Cleveland Clinic hospital. That's beginning to get all people, even at the lower levels, understanding that your job has purpose. You're not directly saving a life. You're not conducting the surgery, but in some small way, you actually do meaningfully contribute to that. And there's, I think, a big opportunity in healthcare. And again, you don't have to overstate it, but everyone does play a role in patient care. I mean, people get very upset having to wait long periods of time in a waiting room. Okay, that's an important thing for staff. That's part of the care, not the physical care, but there are other things that are happening. So there are some tools, especially when it gets to purpose, um, that can be useful. And even autonomy, with scheduling, shift changes, how they deal with patients, there obviously you have to have scripts and processes, but there might be some autonomy that you can give to staff or the staff managers that allow them a little bit more control over that process that should help their motivation as well. So here I'm just trying to get you to think about, yes, you have extrinsic tools. There will be people who are highly motivated. We know plenty of faculty who want to hit those rungs on the ladder to get that respect, to get those external validation. But we also have people who maybe need to be reminded of some of these things to help. We all hit our ruts in the year. Sometimes those ruts can easily be fixed by focusing on intrinsic motivation. And Gregor, to your question, this is one thing that I think is very helpful. It's one tool to when you're dealing with people. Leaders, in my experience, think that somebody's either extrinsically motivated or intrinsically motivated on one end of the spectrum or the other. That's false. These are two separate dimensions. They can be related, but think of them as orthogonal. They are separate. You should be thinking them as people can be low or high on intrinsic motivation or low and high on extrinsic motivation. 5 years ago during COVID, when I was going from assistant to associate, a big promotion for tenure, I've always been high intrinsic motivation. Joe talked about teaching. I love teaching, but I was also extrinsically motivated trying to get awards for my publications, getting recognized, also just wanting to have the job security with that. So it's possible to be both very highly intrinsically motivated and highly extrinsically motivated at the same time. And again, these are states, not traits. So again, within people, they can change over time, different parts of your career. And Greg, I will recognize that doesn't make your leadership job easy. It doesn't. But if you've met people, we're messy, and this is just a way to understand that. And so this is just one diagnostic. I like to use it first, especially when you think about groups of people. This group is not doing what they can. They're not pulling their weight. Okay, we've tried these things. We've tried to punish them in some way. Well, maybe we can find an intrinsic motivator to help with that. Questions about that before we move on? Okay. Just to bring this full circle, this is the first motivational tool. For this, I'm assuming that most people are already familiar with rewards and reward systems, promotions, pay raises, healthcare benefits, that stuff like that. So it's getting you to think about what intrinsic motivators you can use, but it also depends, not just, Greg, to your point, on the person, but the type of job people are doing. So if you saw the Dan Pink TED Talk, what type of tasks do intrinsic rewards work best for, generally speaking? And if you didn't see it, this is the candle problem. He talks about it turns out when you give people this problem, you have to find a way to light the candle and prevent the wax from dripping on the table. And when you give the problem this way, it's pretty creative. It's not an easy solution. And when you pay people, it turns out they do worse. They've run this multiple countries using different amounts of money, different age groups, happens all the time. When you give them a creative problem, when you give them money for solving it quickly, they do worse. And when they simplify the problem, make it easier, they take the tax out of the box and they give everybody a hint, then the rewards work. So the extrinsic rewards work very well if you have simple solutions and things where you can train people, where you can train people with one right way of doing things. Most of the time, you can use extrinsic rewards. However, intrinsic rewards work best for creative, cognitively challenging tasks, that should say. And LinkedIn does this. They what's it called? LinkedIn Me Days, I think, or Me Days, and they let people pick the training that they want, the professional development, and they get several days off to develop that, right? And that's a direct intervention for intrinsic motivation, allowing some self-development, allowing you to develop some mastery in things that maybe you haven't. And so for most challenging tasks, you should be thinking about, especially advanced healthcare issues that many of you are facing, team-based problems that you're facing. Intrinsic motivation is going to open up the creative pathways and help people solve those issues more effectively. So this is kind of a call, especially in complicated high service organizations like healthcare, to use more intrinsic motivators. Questions about that? So this is a first tool. If you've already used extrinsic rewards in the past, Maybe switch that. Think about ways to use autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Okay, so the second motivation tool is something called expectancy theory. It's a very cognitive, intrapsychic theory, meaning we kind of all use this calculation at different times. And there are three links in this chain, and each must be met. If you break one link in the chain, the people who theorized about this thought of it as a multiplication equation. So if one part of the equation goes to zero, the rest of it goes to zero. So you have to be thinking about each link in the chain. And it's actually three questions, pretty straightforward. The first question is, if I work hard, will I get better at what I do? Will I see the rewards of my effort in terms of, like, if I'm shooting free throws in basketball and I practice over and over again, do I start to make more baskets, right? And do I start to score more points in games? That's the first part. If I put in effort, will I succeed? Then if I perform, will I get rewarded? So in that first chain, maybe it's a high school student who starts to study more and they realize they get better grades. Sorry. They start to study more and they learn more material. So they answer more questions correctly. Then the next stage is, okay, I've answered more questions correctly. Do I get a better grade at the end of the term? And maybe will that get me into college, right? Or a good medical school, something like that. So that's instrumentality. Does the work I do start to translate into rewards? That's the second question. And the third is, do I value those outcomes, right? If you put a lot of hard work into residency, that's the first chain, the effort part. Do you start to get noticed? Do you match well, right? So that's instrumentality. And then do I value that, right? How much do I value the hospital or the healthcare system where I'm going to, right? And those are the three aspects of this chain. And you probably can recognize times in your life where you've been thinking about these. You probably, if you've lived long enough, had times where that instrumentality was broken, right? You thought you were going to get something, and then a coach didn't play you, or somebody didn't give you the performance evaluation or the recommendation you wanted. That's a break of instrumentality. Okay. So many of us could probably think about times when that has happened. So again, to be motivated, you must have some minimum answer, like a non-zero answer to each of those questions. Hopefully it's pretty high. And if you hit all three of these, most people will be very highly motivated. All right, so I know it's late and even later in Europe. So I'm going to show a scene from the cult classic Office Space. I love it because it still holds up about 30 years later, but this is a way of thinking about why expectancy motivation is so important. And I'm sure the writers of the movie didn't realize it, but this is kind of a speech. They don't use the term expectancy theory, but Peter Gibbons here is going to tell us a lot about expectancy theory. All right. And let me know, I think the sound should be working. Let me know if it doesn't. Give me 1 second. I gotta.
You're just talking about you. You must be Peter Gibbons. Terrific. I'm Bob Slidell. This is my associate, Bob Porter. Oh, hi, Bob. Bob, pretty much go ahead and grab a seat and join us for a minute or two.
Just making sure everyone can hear it. Thumbs up. Audio. Good. Okay.
You see, what we're actually trying to do here is we're trying to get a feel for how people spend their day at work. So, if you would you walk us through a typical day for you?
Yeah.
Great.
Well, I generally come in at least 15 minutes late. I use the side door. That way Lumberg can't see me. And after that, I just sort of space out for about an hour.
Space out?
Yeah, I just stare at my desk. But it looks like I'm working. I do that for probably another hour after lunch, too. I'd say in a given week, I probably only do about 15 minutes of real, actual work.
Peter, would you be a good sport and indulge us and just tell us a little more?
Oh, yeah. Let me tell you something about TPS reports.
TPS?
The thing is, Bob, it's not that I'm lazy. It's that I just don't care.
Don't care?
It's a problem of motivation, all right? Now, if I work my ass off and Initech ships a few extra units, I don't see another dime. So where's the motivation? And here's something else, Bob. I have 8 different bosses right now.
I beg your pardon?
8 bosses.
Eight?
8, Bob. So that means that when I make a mistake, I have 8 different people coming by to tell me about it. That's my only real motivation, is not to be hassled. That and the fear of losing my job. But you know, Bob, that'll only make someone work just hard enough not to get fired.
So I love that clip because he's talking about if he works harder and the company sells more units, he doesn't get any of that, right? And that's direct. Oops, what just happened? Sorry about that. Good. If the company makes more money, sells more units, he doesn't see any of that. So that breaks his instrumentality motivation. It just doesn't care. And also the negative reinforcement also has a negative effect in terms of expectancy. I'm just going to do the bare minimum such that my boss doesn't bother me about making this mistake anymore. Right. So it's not that your motivation is zero, but that effort to performance, I'm just going to do just enough and so that I can avoid having a negative reaction from the boss, right? So this is a good example of expectancy theory. If you haven't seen it, it's a great movie from the mid 90s and it still holds up, at least a little bit for our generation. It holds up pretty well. All right. So for this one, I want to, I think the best way to use expectancy and to put it into the healthcare context is to give you this scenario. And it's certainly something where you may have had this happen. I don't know. I've just heard stories, right? So this might be a fictional story. Let's call it fictional, right? We're not going to name a hospital, but the scenario is there's pushback against using a new technology at a hospital. Okay, so you're an executive at a healthcare system implementing a new technology in each of the system's hospitals. The new technology will be used during a routine surgical procedure and is intended to reduce costs and improve patient outcomes. When rolling out and implementing the new technology, there has been pushback. You received feedback that many physicians are not using the new technology and have reverted to using the old technology. Assuming for the moment, so for this, let's just assume that the new technology does in fact reduce costs and improve patient outcomes. How can you use expectancy theory to increase the physician's motivation and willingness to use the new technology? So I'm going to give you a chance to finish reading this, give you like 20 more seconds just to read this. And then what I'll do is I'll put back the expectancy theory and we can walk through what might be going on in this case. All right, everyone get a chance to read it? I'm going to put this back and give you these 3 links. So what do we think might be happening here? And you can unmute or even add to the chat. Well, let's start with actually, I can do this. Yeah, what could be the link with the effort to performance link? So if I put in effort, will my productivity improve? This could also be how much work I put forth, quantity, but also quality. So what might be happening with this new technology in terms of the physicians and what they're thinking about?
It might not be that easy to use, right? So that at least initially it's slowing them down or just frustrating them.
Yep. So initially, especially, it could be frustrating at the beginning. We're not really talking about short term or long term there, right? Perfect. What else?
It might require extra time out of their day to learn the new technology. So taking more time away from family.
Absolutely. Right. So again, it might be they're already busy, so there's extra training that they might need. I think, and then in the chat, Carrie mentioned might be slowing them down, right? If I'm an expert, if I'm the expert in this domain, this new technology is supposed to help me, but it might initially slow me down, right? Uh, Anything else in the effort to performance?
They feel like their outcomes are already fine, don't need to make any changes.
Yep. Right. I mean, most of you, I'm going to assume, are pretty expert at what you do, right? And so there might be very low error rates already involved. So like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. How am I going to get better with this? Yep. Did I see another hand? Yes, and Al, they might be more skeptical that they will like, I am superior at my job. How can this ever happen? And I think this happened with CAD, which is computer assistant drawing for architects early on. Most of us assumed like I don't need this, and then over time, yes, it did improve productivity, but it took a lot of convincing, right? So if you think about this, if I'm trying to lead change, we just gave four reasons why physicians might not be interested or might be losing some of their motivation with this link. We haven't even gotten to the other two links yet. Okay. Um, Usually I go through the links in order. For this one, though, I like to go a little bit out of order. Oh, sorry, I hit the wrong button there. What outcomes might the physicians value? How might this technology change be influencing the outcomes that they care about? So we said it might slow them down. What might they be worried about?
Worried about their efficiency or operative times.
Yep, exactly. The RVU loss, right? And I think Jim and others already said if I'm really good at this, right, the outcome that I might value is expertise, right? And being the best in my field at this. And if this technology might slow me down in the short term, that's not something I really want to do. And even, especially as we get older into a career, we might start to think, I might not be the expert. I might actually believe the technology will work, but I might actually lose some of my status as being the best if somebody can operate this technology slightly better and surpass me. So this is going to start to push on some outcomes that we start to value here. That's on the negative side. On the positive side, if I am like UPMC, which is a big institution with I think 47 hospitals, it's likely that if I'm rolling out a new technology, several units in hospitals are going to be skeptical and not believe that the patient outcomes will be there. So I may need to take additional steps to make sure that everyone, surgeons, physicians included, actually believe that new technology will improve those outcomes in the long run. And I may need to find some doctors and physicians who have already implemented it and get them to give the roadshow for me as the chief medical officer because they might not trust me, right? I might need to get some people to help show them that the valence is real. That at the end of the day, over 3 months, 6 months, the patient outcomes will get better, right? So just because you know the technology might work because you've piloted it, it doesn't mean that everyone else will share that assumption, even if the data are there, right? It may need to take some convincing and show them the journal articles, but also show them how it's done, right? So it actually takes a lot more in terms of improving their expectancy. And then what could be an issue with instrumentality in terms of implementing the technology? So usually this is a link where, okay, we're using the technology, but something else might be missing here. Oops, sorry. And this could be something where the people who are implementing it aren't getting recognized or noticed. It might be that the patient outcomes might start to improve in 6 months to a year. So the initial implementation might lead to some bumps. So they might be seeing declines in patient outcomes. So that instrumentality might be getting hit, right? You're learning this new technology, you're implementing it, but that outcome that you're getting from that might not be working. It doesn't have to be that you're getting paid for it. That's not what we're talking about. But the outcome in terms of what you're seeing in terms of patient quality might be going down for the first few weeks or months, and that might also cut into what's happening. So hopefully this is a realistic scenario that you've maybe had some experience with. So this is a diagnostic tool, right? So if the effort to performance link is broken, we might need training, right? Constant training to get better at this because people think they're going to be slowed down. They may need to see this in action, right? Give them more opportunities and skills to use the technology effectively. And you might also just need to specify what it is you're using to measure performance in this case so that they know that some people in sports, they practice, but they're practicing the wrong drill. So you might need to clarify what the practice is about when you're rolling out a technology or in general for the E to P link. If instrumentality is broken, right? I mean, you're all familiar with RVUs, like the more patients that you see, the more outcomes you get. That would be a good example of instrumentality, right? So the reward should be dependent on performance. Like the survey scores, Press-Ganey scores, and things like that you're getting are rewards tied to that. That is a form of instrumentality. We won't get into whether you think those survey scores for patients are valuable, but to the extent that they're linked to performance and rewards, then yes, then instrumentality would be captured there. And then if the valence link is broken, then you need to figure out what do people value. And in this case, with the technology example, you might need to ask what people are afraid of, right? Because that's a signal about what outcomes they care about. And so you might need to ask people, maybe not what they're looking for, but what they're trying to avoid. And that might be a cue into, or a good signal into what outcomes you need to be thinking about. Any questions about expectancy? Oops. Sorry, I was trying to get to the video screen. All right, if not, I'll move on to our last um, uh, tool for the evening, and this one I'm not gonna be able to cover, and I knew that when I designed this, so I'm just gonna touch on this briefly, and then I'm gonna send Joe, and he'll pass on to you some really good. I have a good self-assessment that I use for the class that Joe has taken, the Executive MBA. You don't have to write a formal paper, but if you go through the exercise, it will help you with your own goal setting, because the concept is pretty simple. If you think about for a second New Year's resolutions and think about New Year's resolutions and how people don't achieve them. It's June. Like, what was your New Year's resolution? People don't even remember anymore, right? And so SMART goals is a way to get around that. And it's not just for New Year's resolutions, but for any goals, okay? SMART goals are specific, measurable, aggressive, realistic, and time specific, right? A good example of dumb goals. Keep doing what you're doing, right? That's terrible leadership right there. If you think about New Year's resolution, people say things like get healthier, go to the gym more, right? Lose weight. All of those don't do much, right? Not very specific, not time bound. And most important, they don't identify the roadblocks. So when I deal with undergraduates, they have all these goals for losing weight and being healthier, and then they go to class and they have their first set of midterms, and they all go out the window because they didn't plan for when February hits. I have all these exams, these papers, and that week I completely stopped doing all the routines I had created in the first part of the year, right? So the corollary is we are all busy. We all have very busy times. The SMART goals help you see those challenging times in advance, recognize when your very important routines might be at risk, and helps you to focus on these things that you care about during those times, right? So SMART goals are a way of doing that. And the aggressiveness is what helps keeps you motivated. The video I'll share with you is, or after this, is on OKRs, objectives and key results. And the speaker there talks about very high level, very ambitious goals, because that's another key part to these. These need to be ambitious goals so that when June hits, and my kids have all these youth sports, and I'm trying to watch World Cup soccer, I still need goals to keep me focused at work. I still have time for those things, but I still need those kind of North Star goals to keep me focused on the work I'm doing on a day-to-day basis. The SMART goals and the OKR framework that I'll share afterwards really help you achieve that throughout the year, even when you're struggling, even when you're hitting those difficult time periods. The other thing that if you're doing a diagnosis of, okay, I sat down with my employees or my residents, I set SMART goals, and they all, it was a good session at the beginning of the year, but it's kind of fallen off the wayside. It's probably because goal commitment has wavered since then. So SMART goals are great, but if the person isn't committed to them, it's not going to work. So here are a few things. Again, I'll share these slides with you so you can have this as a checklist. Make the goal public, right? I tell college kids, share your goals with your roommates. Let your parents know what your GPA goals are. And then it's public, right? It's out there, right? This is why sports teams have the signs with their goals on it. You can do this in your department to the extent that everyone's on board, make people know what's happening. And this is where extrinsic rewards are okay. If you want to, put technology adoption up on a scoreboard, right? You're making it public. This is what we care about. We need you to do this. It's okay to use extrinsic rewards in those contexts. As leaders, though, I think where you step in is helping people identify the roadblocks, recognizing, hey, this is where, I had a huge challenge in my residency program in this year, right? This is why we set those goals, and here's how you're going to move past this, right? So that's why you come in, you provide your support, right? Remind people of why these are important. Remind them of, where they're headed towards, what their ambitions are, right? And as leaders, again, you should be providing feedback, not every day, but you should not be waiting for annual or even mid-year evaluations. And it doesn't even have to be feedback. We just check in. Say, hey, we set these goals at the beginning of the year. Hey, where are you? And this is not an evaluation. I just want to know where you are because I want to try to help you if you're struggling. So commitment is a big part of this as well. So I want you to have that tool as well. So it's not just about SMART goals, it's making sure that you're committed and the people you're working with are committed to those same goals. And that's usually a two-way street in a discussion that you're having. Okay. Questions about goal setting? I know I covered that quickly. Cool. All right, so three things I want you to leave here with. There's no one best way to motivate employees. You have intrinsic and extrinsic forms of motivation that we talked about at the beginning. You now begin to have some frameworks. It's just an hour. This is just an introductory session on this, but now you have expectancy motivation, intrinsic motivators, goal setting to both diagnose people, but also to design the prescriptions that come after that. Right. So I think we have close to 10 minutes remaining, at least by my watch. I'll stop sharing and can answer questions that people have about anything we talked about tonight.
Every time I listen to this talk and watch Dan and watch the pink video, my question is, why don't our health systems know this? Or why don't the leaders, like the real leaders, employ this? I mean, Dave
So
and I talked about this. It's just, yeah, it's crazy.
yeah, I'm interested. I mean, I don't have a good sense of healthcare systems around the world. I mean, my own experience talking to people, I'm pretty ethnocentric and just who I've interacted with in the United States. Economics is a pretty dominant paradigm in the United States. It's not everywhere. There's a good line in the Dark Knight movie, the Batman movie, where the villain is talking about ways to destroy the world. He's like, we're trying a new tool. It's called economics. Right? And that always resonated with me. And so there's obviously benefit to economics, but I think, especially in the United States, the fault is that economics is always right. And it's just a way of looking at the world. It's not a dominant paradigm. Psychology shouldn't be the dominant paradigm, nor should sociology. These are just ways of looking at the world. But I think people default to economics and the numbers are always right, especially when your leaders are trained from business schools, right? Which is why I think Joe has these programs and why I teach in these programs. It's actually to get physicians in these leadership positions so that it's much more balanced with this. And yes, you need to balance the books. Accounting and finance is important. You need to finance things, but at the same time, it can't be the end all be all. And that's what the extrinsic reward bias is all about. That's why I lead with it every time I'm doing this. It's a very powerful bias, and there's so many other motivators that we could be using. I know, Joe, we've talked about it, so hopefully that's that 2-minute answer.
But I do think, even though all of us, on this phone call, who are middle managers, right? Leaders of divisions, residency programs of a small group of people, even though we may not get this from the senior leadership in the health system, you can employ this for your team in unique and individual ways, right? So you can make a difference for the folks that report to you, even though maybe your health system does use these tools and understands the benefits of intrinsic motivation and stuff. I think the challenge for those of you on the phone is to take this information and then to use it in the best way you can for the people that you lead.
And some people might even in business school, like if talk about the finance faculty, they might call this like hard and soft motivators. It's just such a terrible way of talking about this. Like intrinsic motivation is when you get it going, it's incredibly powerful. And the point of that exercise too was that extrinsic rewards are powerful. Not people are motivated by money. I'm not denying that at all. I'm just saying that the intrinsic motivators are just as powerful depending on the task. And also the time at a certain time you've been motivated by money probably more or extrinsic motivators. There are other times where you've been more motivated by intrinsic motivators. We need to balance that.
Do you, Joe or Dave, do you have any thoughts on tactics or tricks or things that you've employed to get to understanding what an intrinsic motivator might be for a struggling faculty member, a struggling resident that you can't really put a finger on the pulse of? Like, is because I think sometimes you could try to have a conversation and maybe they don't have the insight as to understand what their intrinsic motivators are. And so how do you break through for that?
So you might in your domain might have a lot more of
Yeah.
you've probably had more of these conversations than I had.
Yeah, I would use the skills that we talked about in the coaching conversation. And step one, connect and calibrate, right? Because no one is going to open up to you and unless they know that you care and that you've connected with them. And then really investigate what they want. What is important to you? You know, what is going on? What do you want out of life? What is your goal? What is what? And then trying to go from there and tease out with that just open conversation to figure out what it is for them. Because like Dave said, we're all motivated. You know, I love the idea that it's not a continuum of intrinsic and extrinsic because it's both of us. You know, we've all had it. If this, yeah, we certainly do want, promotion and salary and prestige and stuff. I mean, I'm not alone in every one of you, I'm sure, can appreciate that. On the other side, though, it's those intrinsic things. So trying to figure out where the person is at that time, and why they're struggling, is the best you can do, I think.
Yeah, I like that answer. And Jim, a little bit more specific. So if you know the resident who's struggling is suffering from burnout, you need to immediately jump to intrinsic motivation. Then one of the number one causes of burnout, besides the physical strain of how many hours you're working, is not being able to see the outcomes of your work anymore, right? Even a little bit. And so if you could even start to see a little bit of progress, a diagnostic question probably is something along the lines of like, what got you into this in the first place? Like kind of tying on that. But with burnout's a little bit more than that. Like, what's happening? Because Jim, you might say like, look, you are having an impact, and maybe they just need to be reminded of that, And I'm trying that with my son in baseball, 12 years old. Like, hey, we're going to Myrtle Beach next week for a big tournament. It's like you're struggling at the plate. Everyone goes through slumps, but here's some times where look, you've hit the ball really hard in the past. Like just remember that it's there. And so like as a leader, you might just need to nudge them if we're talking about burnout, right? Because again, one of the biggest causes of burnout is kind of like your intrinsic motivation has been cut off in somebody. Like take COVID, right? I save patients all the time, and now so many people are dying. No wonder everyone's burning out because now I can't see the impact anymore. That's an extreme example of that, but it might be some subtle things going on. For middle career people who might be stuck, it might be intrinsic motivation in terms of job crafting. What is it that's now on your plate that you don't want that much of? Is it research? Is it clinical responsibilities? Is it just the management responsibility? So getting back to what's a better allocation of those tasks. Because you get promoted, you don't always know that you're going to have all these new tasks. So if it's kind of like stuck in a career point, it might be like a job crafting intrinsic motivation intervention. Like let's talk about what's on your plate. What do your roles look like? And which one do you want more of? And what do you want less of? And I'm seeing a lot now that for well-being, a good use of AI is to identify the things you don't want to be doing as much of and using AI to get rid of those, as opposed to using AI for the things that are like most important. Uh,
Yeah,
that's just anecdotal. I don't know if there's research on that, but I kind of like it as a framework for thinking about if we're going to use AI to think about our well-being. I like to use it for like that bottom third set of tasks that like and they could tell you it's draining when I do this, right? And so that might be a way to figure out which part of the intrinsic motivation is important to them. Like you can't just assume that they can tell you which tasks. Joe, go ahead.
yeah, no, and for physicians that are burned out that I've worked with, and exploring with them why they and why they went into all of us. Why did we go into this? It was all intrinsic kind of motivators. Most of us on this and most physicians don't go to medical school with the extrinsic motivation of I just want to make money, right? Or I want to. Some do, right? But I think the majority of us have went into this and trying to explore that and revisit that and try to get to that mindset again about why we've done that. And we've all suffered from moral injury since that time. And you all know the story. But I think trying to help them see that is one thing I've done that's maybe helped.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's great.
Well, it's 9 o'clock. I want to be respectful of everybody's time. And Dave, thank you so much. You all get the pleasure of having Dave back for a couple of other sessions during this first group of module recitations. Um, If anything comes up, I'm sure Dave would be happy to chat with you about that. He's an incredible resource. If you want him to come and speak at your divisions or, faculty retreats or whatever, he's done that for us. It's a great experience. Um, and yeah, I hope you have a great Friday and the rest of the week. And it really was. I'm really happy to see everybody tonight. So again, thank you, Dave, and have a great week. We'll see you. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
And,
you.
and, and honestly,
Thank
don't
you,
hesitate
guys.
to reach out. I offer that to my students and exec ed too. If you have like a specific issue that you want more thoughts on, I'm happy to help with that. Have a good night,
All
everybody.
right.
Thanks
Thank
so
you.
much, guys.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Bye.
All right, thanks, Joe. Appreciate it.
Thank you.